Hi, I'm Teodor. Do I look into... Sorry. So I look at you.
I haven't prepared for this question.
This is really embarrassing that this is the point at which I needed my notes. It was politics, it's okay, I should start again.
Hi, I'm Shivani. I work in the Public Bodies and Regulation team.
I'm Amber. I'm on the Public Services team.
Hi, I'm Teodor. I work on the Civil Service and Policymaking teams at the IfG.
Hi, I'm Catherine and I'm in the Comms team.
I'm Shaina and I'm working in the Public Finances team.
Hi, my name is Paddy. I work on the Ministers team at the IfG.
I'm Sarah. I work on the Devolution team.
Before doing the internship, I'd relatively recently finished my PhD. And in that kind of weird PhD or post-PhD limbo, I think I was working about 3 or 4 random jobs. So that was a bit of teaching at the university and also some kind of researchy, policy-oriented jobs. So kind of a load of different things. Very, very different from the 9 to 5:30 life at the IfG.
Before I joined the IfG, I had graduated in 2023 with a bachelor's in Politics and International Relations. And then after that, I worked for a year at Policy at Manchester, which is a policy engagement institute working to connect academics and their research to policymakers and local stakeholders. So I used to be a communications and engagement assistant there.
I was doing my master's.
So I graduated in 2023 and then I worked for a year at a really small think tank on data policy.
I came to the IfG straight from university. I was studying philosophy.
Before I was working at the IfG, I had completed a history degree and then I was working for an MP between her parliamentary and constituency office.
I was working as a researcher in a headhunting firm that sort of worked across multiple sectors, including government, healthcare, arts and charities.
So I decided to apply because I had been following the IfG for quite a while and I really admired what it does as an institution and sort of the mission behind it. I had also used a lot of the sort of explainers and comment pieces and so on back when I was in uni, when I was trying to get a grasp of the intricacies of British politics and government. So that was definitely very useful. And I think especially sort of in the last few years, especially since COVID, there's been quite a few sort of interesting political events and scandals in the UK. So I really wanted to be part of an organization that works towards solving these issues and sort of influencing policymaking for the better.
I decided to apply because I'd originally been thinking about academia, and then I realised that I wanted a job that would allow me to combine the more like academic side of my degree, but also enable me to work with people because like research in philosophy is quite solitary, but also to be able to deliver impact with the work that I was doing.
I was familiar with some of the IfG's work. Knew that they had like a very good reputation for sort of interesting policy work, and I was really keen to develop some good research skills.
I've been following the IfG for a really long time and I've been a really big fan, and I really wanted to work in the policy space. And it seems to me like the research internship at the IfG is genuinely the only one of its kind. So it just made a lot of sense for me to apply and I guess hope for the best.
I'd been following the IfG's work for a while and I'd been to a few events. And I just knew I really liked researching and writing about policy.
So my previous job gave me a bit of exposure to kind of senior officials and organisations in government. And I thought it was a sector that I would be really interested in working in. But I didn't have any background in studying policy or politics outside of kind of my general interest. So when I came across the IfG internship, I thought it was a really good opportunity to, even though you work in one team, kind of learn about the breadth of work that the IfG does.
In terms of IfG itself, I mean, I wouldn't say I was an IfG super fan, but I was aware of the IfG. I kind of knew them in the abstract. And once I kind of spotted the internship, I dived a bit more into it. And there's something about it, I think, that more broad focus on structures and also personalities and how personalities actually interact with structures, which really appealed to the historian in me. I like the way that, the way the outputs are written are they make something that to me has always felt quite ethereal and distant and abstract quite tangible. And that was something I wanted to learn more about and have a go at doing myself. So here I am.
The civil service team focuses on the civil service, as it says in the name. So there's a lot of stuff about civil service reform, about how ministers and civil servants interact, how we can improve the effectiveness of the civil service. And then the policymaking team focuses on the policymaking process as such. So from the stage where policies get devised up until the stage at which they get evaluated, and how that process currently functions and how it can be made to function better.
We do a massive range of things looking at devolution to the nations and the regions within England. That covers everything from the union and relations between central and devolved governments through to the powers of metro mayors, combined authorities. Yeah, a long list.
So public finances sort of provides a lot of economic support to other teams. We also comment on things like budgets and big fiscal events, changes to sort of tax and spend policies, a whole host of things basically.
I'm in the public services team. We look at hospitals, criminal justice system, education and local government. I've recently been doing a series of projects where we look at the performance of those public services at a local level. So for example, looking at what high performing schools have in common. But we also look at the finances, workforces, productivity of those public services.
So the communications team does loads and lots of varying things as well. So we work with a lot of the research teams to produce sort of all of our written output. So things like reports, explainers, comment pieces, anything that gets published on the website. We also produce our newsletters. So there's 3 of them. We work with coordinating the podcast. So the IfG has 2 podcasts, the Inside Briefing and the Expert Factor. We create digital content for social media and for the website. And also importantly, we sort of organize and deliver events.
So I am on the ministers team. And as the name might suggest, the ministers team looks at ministers, going all the way from junior ministers up to those in cabinet. I think we look at lots of aspects of what ministers actually do, but I think what we're broadly interested in is what is it that a minister specifically adds, and how certain things in government really, I guess, rest on a minister to get things done. We do that in lots of ways in my team. We have probably one of the oldest running projects in the IfG. I'm saying that without qualification. I'm not entirely sure if it's true. But the Ministers Reflect Archive, so that involves these kind of in-depth interviews with former ministers. And that kind of results in these really fun stories about, something happening in the Brown government. But it is also these kind of tangible questions of how did you do X and what did you personally find difficult about that role, which I think is really interesting.
So previous examples of work that the team has put out has included a report on how Parliament can hold regulators to account. Or a series of reports about the life cycle of a public body, how to set one up, how to abolish one. We also contribute to the annual Whitehall Monitor publication, looking at the state of the arm's length body landscape, and publish deep dive explainers into specific interesting public bodies such as Ofgem or the Post Office.
I refuse to say that there's no typical day at the IfG because I know, I watched the last year's one and I know that every single person said that, even if it is fundamentally true.
You could be doing a whole bunch of things. You could be interviewing people for a project, doing some data analysis, making some graphs, doing some research, writing a blog. Yeah, very varied.
It's genuinely just trying to keep up with the news, trying to keep up with developments in Whitehall and Westminster and elsewhere. So it really does vary quite a lot, which is part of what makes the job so nice, I think.
So I would say there isn't really a typical day, especially in the comms team. It all really sort of depends on what we're publishing that week, or sort of what's happening in government or in the news. But I would say sort of typical day-to-day responsibilities would be things like editing and proofreading explainers or policy briefings, helping out with the creation of the newsletter, things like creating digital content for social media, for the website, and using sort of different software to do that. And helping out with event logistics, so promotion of the event, but also on the day delivery and sort of prepping before and after the event as well.
I think the main thing is just so friendly and supportive. Everyone's really curious to know what you're working on, and everyone's so interested in what they're working on too. So it's a really great place to kind of collaborate with people, but also just not nerd out a bit, but yeah, I don't know. Everyone's just very interested in what they're doing.
It's great. I really love working here. I'm very struck by how knowledgeable and thoughtful people are about stuff. I feel like people speak with a lot of authority on interesting issues, which means that lunchtime chats are always super interesting. And it's just a very stimulating place to work, and everyone's very generous with their time as well.
It's really friendly, really collegiate and fun. You learn a lot by just kind of sitting with other people and hearing the chatter in the office. I think there's a really nice emphasis on kind of all getting together at lunchtime or for social events. And because it's quite a small organisation, you really do get the chance to get to know everyone.
I think there's two things. I think there's the people are really, really nice and helpful, and it's so nice to get the chance to chat to so many people who are so passionate about what they do, and so sort of diligent and smart, and who know so much. And then the other thing is, I think just getting so much responsibility right off the bat, like getting the chance to pursue things that you're interested in, to lead on various bits of various projects. I think that's really special. I didn't expect to be able to do that, but I am, which is really nice.
I think it's been the opportunity to learn so much so quickly and be given so much responsibility. Early on, I came to working on the devolution team having not done anything about it before. I could name a few metro mayors, and that was it. So being like thrown in week one to getting up to speed on it, learning so much about an area and coming to be really, really interested in it, and then being given the responsibility and support to learn and grow through that has been, an amazing experience.
So far, I think what I've enjoyed the most is that I've been able to learn a lot from everyone at the IfG about topics that I've never had any idea about. I think the best thing about working in the comms team especially is that you get to interact with all the different research teams, so you kind of have a good idea of what's happening at the IfG all throughout and sort of any future projects and things like that. And also I really enjoyed in the beginning when I started getting stuck into party conference prep, because that was a really busy time, but it was also very rewarding having sort of contributed to events that were very successful so early on.
I think just how friendly everyone is, and there's like a lot of humour, and everyone's just very kind and very generous with their time. That's not surprising, I guess. I don't know.
I think I really liked how much kind of credence your senior colleagues will give your opinions and thoughts, and they really kind of encourage you to pitch in. And there's no perception of, oh, they're an intern, they're really new to the sector, they don't know about this stuff. And I find that really like encouraging and motivating.
I kind of had this image, and maybe this is baked in from my PhD days, of this kind of intense, constantly working, no moment to stop, no moment to rest. You're just always working, doing insane hours. And it just hasn't been like that. And I'm very, very happy that it hasn't been like that.
For me, what's been surprising is how much of the IfG's work is not report writing. I think whilst our website does a great job of conveying the different things in my head, a think tank writes reports, whereas actually I'm 4 months in and it's only now that I'm working on my first report, and the work that I've done has covered everything from events and explainers and social media through to private roundtables and briefings for members of the team, going to speak to stakeholders. And it's like the work of the IfG is so much broader than report writing, and I think that's what makes the IfG's contribution so valuable.
This is probably what everybody else will say, but I think it's important not to be intimidated. I always get slightly scared by people who can name all of the ministers since the 1970s. And that's not a skill that I possess, and it's not one that you need to possess. You're not going to be grilled on that in your interview or asked to know that in your day-to-day work. I think people come from all kinds of backgrounds with all kinds of different knowledge. And you don't need to feel worried that you won't fit in.
I think the biggest piece of advice that I could give to anyone applying for the internship at the IfG is to just try to understand what the IfG is about. That really helped me. So going through our back catalog of reports, trying to figure out what sort of the underlying themes and the big running threads in the IfG's work are, and sort of trying to work through that really sort of made me realize that this is a place that is really interesting. This is an organization that does work that I could see myself doing. And it really helped me during the application process as well, in terms of sort of justifying why it was that I wanted to work here. So I think that's honestly one of the best things that you can do for any job, but in particular for our research internship.
I would say go for it. I think especially if you're interested in politics and policy and communication strategies, in current affairs, anything like that, and especially being at the heart of Whitehall and Westminster, I think this is definitely the place for it. And I think there's also loads of support and training available sort of from the beginning all throughout. So you'll definitely get to experience a lot, learn a lot, and expand your skill set.
So a piece of advice that I found most helpful when I was doing my own application was, when you come to kind of read the IfG's outputs and their reports and things when you're preparing, really think carefully about, the particular angle that the IfG kind of comes from with their reports and what makes it uniquely IfG. The voice with which they write and how they approach kind of writing a report and the structure, and think about kind of how you would fit in with that.
Absolutely apply. Don't discount yourself for thinking that you're not the kind of person who should be in a think tank, or that your experience isn't relevant. I think, coming from a background where I was straight out of university, I didn't really have much other experience, and I'd studied a degree which has not necessarily got a reputation for being the most applicable. But don't let that put you off.
I think in your application and in general, think about why the think tank sector versus other sort of politics or policy adjacent careers, and also why the IfG specifically. I feel like it's got a great sort of brand and a very clear ethos that guides everyone who's working here, and it's worth bearing that in mind in your application.
In terms of actually approaching the application itself, I think it's worth just, get yourself a cup of coffee, sit down and try to think of your own narrative of what's got you applying for this role and what you want to get out of it. I found that really useful in the sense of, I'd done this thing, I'd learned these skills, now I think this is a natural next step for me because I want to do this. And I actually found thinking about it like that made approaching some of the questions a lot easier. But I suppose the main thing is just go for it.